It's something most of us do every single day. We jump in a car, drive someplace, and then we need to find a parking space.
You got to get here an hour early to at least hope someone's backing out.
I went around the entire campus trying to find a spot. It took about a half an hour.
I park illegally until I can find a parking space, someone leaves.
It's hard to find a civic concern more universal than the need to park a car. To understand our true demand for parking spaces, transportation specialist Alan Hoffman says take your car and start to multiply it.
Every car generates a demand for anywhere between 4 and 6 parking spaces.
That's what you get when you add up all the parking spaces that are waiting for you at home, at work, at the shopping mall, the grocery store, and so on. In 2010, there were about 3.1 million people living in San Diego County who owned an estimated 2.1 million cars. Now imagine a million more people living in San Diego County by 2030, as demographers predict. That's 685,000 more cars based on car ownership rates. Hoffman says that will require 37 square miles of additional parking spaces.
I'll give you your choice of how you want your 37 square miles. We can either pave over all of San Diego Bay, all of Mission Bay, all of the city of La Mesa, and then build a 2-story parking deck over all of Balboa Park.
Or we could, let's not go there. In fact, we don't have to go anywhere to imagine what parking demands do to a city. There's no better example of how parking affects the landscape than the parking lot of Qualcomm Stadium. There are 19,000 parking spaces here, and the vast majority of the time they're not even used. So how do we stop the paving of San Diego? Elyse Lowe is the director of Move San Diego. She says there are problems with parking policy, and she starts with the example of this downtown parking garage, which enjoys a public subsidy.
And what's important to know about it is that it actually costs less to park here for a month than it costs to buy a monthly transit pass.
Her point? The parking subsidy discourages transit use in a place where a trolley station is just 1 block away. Transit is not practical for all destinations, but Lowe says people should at least pay the real cost of parking.
This isn't about forcing people into transit. This is about actually creating choices for people and making transit an attractive choice by reflecting the true cost of parking and driving is really where we need to go.
Another approach is to do something with all that spare pavement we already have in San Diego. San Diego has a lot of very wide residential streets, up to 52 feet from curb to curb. Hoffman says that's wide enough to redesign parking like they did on Kansas Street in North Park to create head-in parking and increase the number of parking spaces by 35%.
So by just going onto head-in parking on these extremely wide streets that are very typical in a lot of San Diego, we're able to pick up dozens or even hundreds of parking spaces, all for the price of some paint.
Most large parking lots are empty at least 50% of the time. Making better use of that space can, for one thing, make our cities more attractive and vital. Here in North Park, this empty parking lot is converted to a farmer's market once a week. Gary Smith is a member of the Downtown Parking Management Group. He says we should use those periodically empty lots to park more cars that belong to people who keep different schedules. Here he speaks of downtown residential buildings.
For instance, I could build another 3 or 4 high-rise buildings around this commercial building and satisfy the parking requirements for those buildings in the catacomb that's underneath that commercial building, because they only use those for the daylight hours.
About 50 years ago, a writer and intellectual named Lewis Mumford wrote, "The right to have access to every building in the city by private motor car in an age when everyone possesses such a vehicle is the right to destroy the city." Mumford might think San Diego has gone down that path, where people move from one place to another, sealed in their cars, navigating an ocean of asphalt. But optimists like Smith say we don't have to keep paving the city. We can make better use of what we've got.
In 2006, in conjunction with Sandag, we did a study, and we found at that time, which was only a few years ago, there were 10 parking spaces in the city of San Diego for every car that was registered in the city of San Diego. Okay? It's not a shortage of parking. It's a matter of having the parking where people want to go and having the parking work correctly.